4, 3, 2, 1.
Puck short.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the One Puck Short podcast. Sean Leahy of Yahoo's Puck Daddy blog will be joining me shortly, but just one thing I wanted to touch on from the NCAA before we start. Boston University Terriers are kind of embroiled in a bit of a gambling scandal right now. Nick Roberto, a junior third-line forward, was suspended at the start of the season. He won't play this year at all. Now, it's important to stress that the gambling in question didn't involve college or professional hockey games, but it's obviously triggered quite a reaction around the NCAA and hockey in general. It involves other players who have now left the Boston University hockey program. It's curious to see how this is going to work out, I think, because obviously it's a high-profile NCAA program and it's quite a sensitive issue. Again, it doesn't involve college or pro hockey games, but given the way things are in NCAA sports and the pressures involved that we touched on with Dave Starman a couple of weeks ago with terms of the financial compensation and so forth for these young players, this was quite a big story. So we'll keep track of that as things develop. But it was just one I wanted to very quickly touch on before we get to things with Sean and talk a little of NHL hockey. The British side of things, congratulations to the Great Britain under-20s team who secured a bronze medal in France. Quite an interesting little stat I noticed earlier on while reading up on the post-tournament stuff. It looks like every member of this team would be eligible to play again next year, which could be huge for Great Britain, taking that experience forward, and they had some big results beating Slovenia, who were one of the tournament favourites. Unfortunately, a heavy loss to Poland cost them maybe a silver medal or even a gold medal. They were in a good position heading into the final day, as it was. France picked up the win. They needed to take gold. Poland took silvers. But a very positive result, I think, for GB under-20s in a tough group. Sometimes a little bit down on the GB programme, and I think I've got fair reason to be occasionally, but that was definitely a great result for them. So congratulations. In the Elite League, Cardiff topping the table heading into the festive break. They are currently 1-0 down in Belfast, but they've had a pretty strong run this season. Well, assuming Belfast do win the game, they will move a little closer. They'll move on to 33 points to run level with Sheffield in third. But the Devils 37 points leads everybody. Nottingham second with 34. As I said, Sheffield 33. Currently Belfast 31. Dundee 31. Braehead 28. Fife 23 points. Edinburgh 21 points. Coventry off the bottom with 19. They've got a whopping 6 games in hand on Edinburgh as well. And the Manchester Storm currently bottom, but a lot of positives there for the Storm. I think in their first season they're battling hard and they're still very much in the mix there with 18 points. So that's just 3 points outside the playoffs with pretty much half the season still to go. In the EPL, Peterborough Phantoms top heading into the holiday break, 43 points. Basingstoke, Milton Keynes lead the chasing pack. Bison have 38 points, and Milton Keynes have 36. Swindon Wildcats 34 and Guildford 33. And last year's champions Telford 32. So still a long way to go there. And say the Phantoms have a 5-point lead at the top, very positive for them, and they'll be very pleased with that after winning the playoffs last year. Situation in Manchester remains interesting. They're currently 8th with 25 points. I think they've probably got theoretically enough of a gap on Bracknell in 9th, who've got 16 points. But Manchester's problem is financial. I know a lot of people are very concerned about the situation there. They need quite a substantial amount of money to make it to the end of the month, which is in the region of £35,000. But moving forward beyond that, I'm very curious as to what they're going to do for January, February and March. The season will end late March or early April. So how's this team going to keep going then? I'm going to assume they'll get to the end of December by hook or by crook. But I mean, some of the figures bandied about are that the team's outgoings are in the region of £35,000 a month. And their income, if we're being generous, is about 10 or 15. So, they're losing £20,000 to £25,000 a month. And I just don't see how they're going to close that gap. There's been talk of selling off the shares that should be bought back from Red Hockey, who obviously invested in the team before. And, these shares are basically worthless because everybody knows the team's not making any money. And there's also talk of engaging with local businesses to try and find more local sponsors around the D-side area. But equally, the Phoenix ownership have been quite honest about their determination to move the team back to Manchester and get a new rink within the city. So why would a local business want to partner up with a team who are looking to actively leave the area? One Puck Short is brought to you in association with Eastside Hockey Manager, an in-depth ice hockey management simulation brought to you by Sports Interactive and Saga, developers of the world-famous Football Manager series, available now for PC via Steam. Joining me now on the One Puck Short podcast, a writer for Yahoo's Puck Daddy blog and master of the trail mix, is Mr. Sean Leahy. Hi, Sean. How are you?
Hi, Rob. Thanks for that great introduction.
Well, I don't think trail mix is quite as big over here as it is in the States, but I know you're a big fan and have your special mix on hand at all times.
Yeah, I had to. It's the staple of the Puck Day road trip. Whenever myself and Greg Wyshynski go on the road, we have to have one giant bag of trail mix, which always has to include the M&Ms. It's the most vital part of trail mix.
Joining me today to talk about the Penguins, because to nail colours to the mast, you're a Pens fan. And it's not gone so well for them right now. 12th in the East, 5 points short of a wild card spot. And I feel like I've talked about the Penguins every week for the last fortnight, but they're kind of the gift that keeps on giving from a podcast point of view. What's gone wrong for this team this year? They've got such a great top six. It's just, I can't make sense of it.
Yeah, and I think we're all surprised just because they're the Penguins. They have some elite talent on their roster. Thought Jim Rutherford did a pretty good job in the summer upgrading the bottom six, which has kind of been their Achilles heel the last few years. But as we've seen, they went into the season with a questionable defense. I mean, you got Chris Letang there and Ian Cole and Oli Mata, who obviously has issues staying healthy. But they kind of went in with some other young guys who didn't have too much experience, and that was a risk. And that's obviously hasn't paid off. And Derek Pouliot didn't pan out earlier in the season, and he got sent down. So it's just outside of Evgeny Malkin, there's really some issues up and down that roster. And as we saw, it cost Mike Johnson his job. And Sidney Crosby's not scoring, Phil Kessel's scoring, but I think everyone kind of expected him maybe to score a bit more than he is. Marc-Andre Fleury was playing fine before his injury. So it's just the defense, the bottom six hasn't really meshed together well, and the defense hasn't been up to snub. So you look at that team and you kind of examine what's gone on, wrong for them this season so far, and it's really not surprising where they are right now in the standings as we head into the new year.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Crosby, 6 goals and 22 points, which by his standards is pretty low in 32 games. Kessel's got 11 goals, which again is okay, but maybe not by Phil Kessel's standards. Patrick Hornqvist is one that stood out for me. He's got 5 goals and 11 points. I kind of expected a little more from him this year. It's just, I mean, Dave Perron was another one I wrote about on the blog about a month ago. I think he scored his first goal in something like 30 games or 20 odd games, and it's real weird as we said, they sorted out the bottom six. It's probably the best bottom six they've had since they won the cup with Jordan Stahl et al. On board. But I mean, the defense it's always been the thing that's been highlighted, and obviously Letang getting hurt again isn't ideal, but he only has a single goal. And they're just, watching them the other night, they just seem to struggle to get the puck out of their own zone.
Yeah, and that was the big issue. They outside of Letang, they really don't have a guy that can move the puck. And then Rutherford goes out and trades that for Trevor Daley, thinking he could aid in that area, which was kind of funny because all Mike Johnson kind of wanted was having a puck moving defenseman, and Rutherford goes out and gets one after he fires him. So. So that trade might have helped him maybe a month and a half ago, and maybe done a little better. But so far it hasn't really gone. Outside of the Columbus game, it really hasn't gone swimmingly for Mike Sullivan since he took over the bench. And you listen to him talk, and he kind of sounds like John Tortorella 2.0. I mean, they're best friends. They've coached together before, so obviously they're probably got some similar tactics and methods. But I don't know if Sullivan is the answer here. And certainly, you look at the team, and you don't want to trade Crosby, Malkin, Letang. You want those guys on this roster to build around. But it just seems like the core pieces. The pieces that he's added really haven't contributed as much as they want to, as well as some older guys like Chris Kunitz, a guy who's obviously had great success on the Crosby line a couple of years ago down to the Olympics. He's only got 4 goals this year. Chris Letang's got a single goal. They had Pascal Dupuis, but it was great to see him come back. But obviously, with the injury issues he's dealing with the blood clots, unfortunately, he had to, hang up the skates. So a lot of things aren't going the way the Penguins expected, and I'm not sure what the next move is because I'm sure Jim Rutherford's trying to, maybe add a piece, upgrade some of the other areas, but, you read quotes around the league from general managers in the trade market out there. It's tough because a lot of teams still believe they're in the playoff hunt, so they're not looking to sell off just yet. So it's going to be the next 2 months leading up into the trade deadline. Certainly be very interesting to see, as teams fall out, what GMs are going to be willing to part with some of the bigger name stars and with heavier contracts who they may be looking to get rid of to kind of take an eye towards the future.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, a lot of teams will fancy themselves still to be in it. I guess the Sabres will probably kind of accept where they are, the Leafs, the Hurricanes and the Blue Jackets. But, I mean, out west, I don't think Anaheim are going to admit defeat. They're bottom of the conference right now. They're 10 points adrift. But in that Pacific Division, it's more like 5 because they're only 5 points behind the Canucks. And it's kind of this funky situation where the Pacific has been so bad but occasionally so good. I mean, Calgary are on a bit of a streak right now. Edmonton had a good streak. So, as you said, it all kind of gums up the trade market. I mean, Dupuis retiring, while not ideal in some respects, does free up some cap space. The Pens have got just over $2 million. I mean, it's basically $2 million and change. Really, it's $12,000. But the loss of Dupuis kind of harkens back to something else that other people have brought up with the Penguins, is that they've kind of lost some of the glue guys they had in years past. Max Talbot was another one that's been mentioned, Bill Guerin, Sergei Gonchar, guys who've maybe been around the block a little bit. They've seen the ups and downs of the league, and they were just able to stand up during times of adversity and say, come on guys, chill out, we can do this, or they'd put a hand on Sidney Crosby's shoulder. And again, the comparison there was always Brent Seabrook and Jonathan Toews. When Toews got a bit pent up, Seabrook was the guy to give him an elbow in the ribs and make him laugh, and all of a sudden everything was okay again. And that seems to be a quality that's missing from this Penguins group right now. Yeah,
absolutely. And you would think guys like Malkin and Crosby would be those guys now, because now they're older. They're 28, 29 years old. And you have a guy like Matt Cullen who's been around forever, but this is his first year on the team. Does he feel comfortable in that spot, stepping up, opening up his mouth in that room as a new guy? I know Jerome McGinley kind of felt that way a couple years ago after he was traded to the Penguins, as they were kind of struggling in the playoffs before they got knocked out by the Bruins. Guys that probably aren't sure of their role in the room, especially if they're a veteran, because there's a bunch of guys who are there, have been established. They've been there for years, like Crosby, Letang, Malkin. They're not sure if they should jump in and open their mouths, but certainly now would be a great time to do that for some of these guys. I mean, you mentioned Guerin. Great story on Guerin is, if you watch the Penguins Stanley Cup DVD from 2009, one of the little bonus clips is he's mic'd up at a practice at Joe Louis Arena during the Stanley Cup final, and he's just busting the guys, just joking with them, making fun of them, keeping things loose. And you go back and watch the actual movie, and that what he's doing that the day after they got shellacked in Game 5 against the Red Wings. So just like you said, Rob, having that kind of personality in the room to loosen things up where times are bad, you certainly need that. And I think that's definitely been missing from this team for several years, as those older guys have gotten older, retired, moved on, and as the younger players back in 2009 have gotten older, there hasn't been that transition there. And Ray Shero and Jim Rutherford haven't to them, I guess, haven't seen a need to bring that sort of personality in the group. I'm guessing they're hoping one of those now older guys from 2009, 2010, those years, assumes that role. But that's certainly something that looks like to be missing from that room right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as you mentioned, that Mike Sullivan's come in. He got his first win as coach on Monday. They beat the Blue Jackets 5-2, who are in a horrendous situation of their own. Phil Kessel snapped an 8-game goalless streak. Not necessarily that bothered about that in a sense, because Kessel does have these streaks, same as Rick Nash and a lot of other goal scorers. So that didn't stand out as such. But the point with Mike Sullivan, as you made earlier, is he's in the mould of someone like John Tortorella. And it's a comparison that's been made a lot. And one thing that strikes me, they've gone from Dan Bilesma to Mike Johnston, who's a kind of controversial choice, to Mike Sullivan, who's a controversial choice. And I'm starting to feel like this is almost the Washington Capitals 2.0, where they've got these big superstar players. They've gone from a popular coach to a harder and harder asked coach, or different style coach each time. And it kind of feels like they just don't know what to do with the team right now. And as I said, this is kind of what the Capitals did with Hunter and Oates, and eventually they found kind of their rhythm again under Barry Trotz. But I mean, I think that comparison is relevant, especially now we have Sidney Crosby as a coach killer articles coming out.
Yeah, I just saw it a little while ago, and that's just ridiculous. But I agree. I mean, Johnson wasn't even their first choice guy. All the talk of the Penguins were wanting to go to Willie Desjardins, who picked the Canucks, and Rutherford went with Johnson, and now Sullivan, who they brought up from Wilkes-Barre. And so it surprised me that them bringing up some promoting Sullivan, was they gave him a 3-year deal. So sometimes you see, these minor league coaches promoted that are with an assistant, they're interim. You give them the rest of the season, they do a good job, you give them an extension or whatever. Yeah. But handing Sullivan right off the bat a 3-year deal, he's not the kind of guy. He's coached in the league before. He's been an assistant for a long time. He's not the kind of coach who, all right, if this fails, just throw him down back in the AHL and it'll be fine. It's not that kind of deal. So they decided to change coaches in the summer. They still owe Sullivan, 2 more years of pay, which obviously is not a smart business decision. So, especially when you have, coaches out there in the market like Guy Boucher, who's always talked about, and who knows who's going to be available come summertime after this season. So, I think to me, this just looks like Jim Rutherford, who, if we remember when the Penguins hired him, said he was only going to be in the job 2-3 years maybe. Yeah. And so I think this is almost kind of like him, his small window is closing, so he's kind of pushing his chips all in, hoping to get the pot and the Stanley Cup within that small window he has for himself. So hopefully that doesn't mean mortgaging some more of the future and giving up some more first-round picks like they've done over the last few years, and hopefully they can restock that cupboard while trying to remain competitive. But certainly it's going to be tough if they're going to be looking to add pieces or upgrade in certain areas in this roster, because teams are going to want something nice in return, and first round picks are always valuable to teams that are going to miss the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned Jim Rutherford there. I know Rob Rossi of the Pittsburgh Tribune Review has gone kind of hard at Rutherford in the past and more recently, and also the team's ownership. And I can kind of understand Rossi's point. I know there's some personal history there between him and Rutherford and the whole go sell ice cream thing that came up last year. But some of the points that Rossi makes, you can completely understand, how is this team being built? And as we said, they've improved the bottom 6 forwards at last. But there's clear holes, and you kind of feel like Marc-Andre Fleury's great play since he teamed up with new goalie coach Mike Bales a couple of years back has papered over some cracks. And Rutherford's just not addressed certain things. He made this big trade to get Phil Kessel, but it feels like that was almost a luxury trade rather than one that was actually going to deal with some of the problems they had. I mean, Rutherford's got to be on the hot seat at some point, right?
Yeah, I would think so. And I think it all comes back to the ownership situation. I mean, Mario and Ron Burkle are trying to sell this team. Mm-hmm. It's coming up on 6 months now, I guess it is, since that news broke. So, I mean, I don't know, would the ownership want to bring in a new GM now? While they're trying to sell a team, or what? It's a very confusing situation. Certainly, they have a couple guys there that could take over. I mean, Jason Bottles has been with the team since I think 2007, 2008. Yeah. He knows the organization. He's a good cap guy, a smart young, up and coming executive in this league. So I would have no problem with him being the next guy. I thought he should have been the guy after Shiro, because he's the guy who paid his dues. He knew the organization. Yeah, he knew the team's cap inside and out. Yeah, and it's also a fresh face with some new ideas, as opposed to a guy Rutherford who's been around for 20 plus years. So it remains to be seen. The ownership situation, it's dragging on, and obviously buyers aren't hitting what Lemieux and Burkle want for that team. So it's going to be curious to see what the final number is and kind of how that sale trickles down to the rest of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with Rutherford is he kind of reached the end at Carolina, who are in a horrible state when he left, and Ron Francis is now unravelling that, and immediately sort of got this job with Pittsburgh. And as you say, Botterill's there, and he's been linked with other general manager jobs, and they've come up. And I don't understand why Pittsburgh wouldn't want to go down that road as a guy who knows the team, knows the cap, knows how the inner workings of the club are. And as you said, again, if this is a guy already within the club, that doesn't rock the boat particularly when you're trying to sell the team. So it's one that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And as I said, I think the comparison's there to the Capitals before, and they had to make that general manager switch as well to really help the team take a step forward. And I don't know, I kind of feel like that's where the Pens are maybe going, no matter how much sort of sparkle and glitter you try and put on it. You know, it's the old thing, sometimes you can't polish a turd. So
yeah, absolutely. And remember, Rutherford was the guy who gave Alex Sedman that 5-year, 35, whatever it was, deal, that long-term deal. Then he retired, and obviously came out of retirement after the Penguins approached him. Because you can't blame him, right? You want to be the GM of the Penguins? Sure, why not? Sidney Crosby getting Malkin, get another shot for winning a cup. Yeah, certainly. But you got Bottle right there, and I firmly believe whether Rutherford's fired or he leaves after his 2 or 3 year window, whatever he said, I hope Bottle's the guy, because the longer you wait and not promote this guy, other teams are certainly going to come calling and looking to bring him on board as their GM, because he's been around for so long and waiting for a shot.
Let's move down the road slightly. I know it's about 3 hours, so maybe not just down the road, but in North American terms, it is. The Columbus Blue Jackets, dead last in the NHL right now. They fired Todd Richards, a guy who was pretty popular, I think, replaced him with John Tortorella. They're 13-13-3 under Tortorella, so whether that move's really paid off is widely up for debate. But this seems to be a franchise in a complete mess right now. And I know Steve Dangle brought it up the other day. Has any group of fans been shit on more than the Blue Jackets in recent years? Because, I think people jumped in and said, hi, I'm from the Florida Panthers. It's kind of like, the Panthers at least went to the final that one year. They've got something to hang their hat on. And a few Blues fans jumped up. But the Blues have got a pretty good team, especially now Jake Allen's playing so well. Whereas the Blue Jackets have got not a whole lot. They haven't even won a playoff round. It's pretty bad in Ohio right now.
Yeah, that first time they made the playoffs, they got swept by the Red Wings, and then a couple years ago, they to me, I thought they outplayed the Penguins. They put a real big scare in them, and the Penguins just, excuse me, the Penguins survived that series, and because the Blue Jackets gave it everything they got. There was some great competitive hockey, great playoff hockey, but there's something maybe in the water there in Columbus, because it just seems like every year they're near the top of man games lost to injury, and I think they're in the top 10 this year. Last year they obviously led the league last year, just because everyone seemed to be getting hurt every other week.
Sure.
and then even this year, you got guys banged up. Johansen had that heart thing earlier in the season. Obviously Bobrovsky's been injured, which is a big blow to them. And they had I had the Blue Jackets making the playoffs this year, because I thought, hey, if they could stay healthy, half as healthy as they were last year, they added Brandon Saad, get a full year Bobrovsky, I thought they'd be okay. But it's just been, like you said, it's just been a big mess. And I think Richards needed to go, just because he's been there for a while, and there needs to be a new voice. But I don't think John Tortorella is the kind of voice that team needed. Yeah, I think some players there maybe need a little bit of a kick in the butt. Maybe a guy like Johansen, and although as we're seeing, that could maybe be leading to the end of his tenure there in Columbus. But you look at that roster, there's some good hockey players there. It's just they just can't play a consistent game. And Jarmo Kekalainen made that risky deal last year, trading Nathan Horton's contract for David Clarkson and his contract, and just to get a body on the ice that can play. If you're paying a guy less money, at least have him on the ice playing for you. Well, David Clarkson playing like David Clarkson as a Leaf, and really has been a big contributor while he carries that huge cap hit for you. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do there. I think Kekalainen's okay. And to me, I don't think Tortorella's going anywhere just yet. I don't think that I don't think they're going to get rid of him after the season. So either some of these players need to get their game turned around, or like in Johansen's case, as we're seeing, if you don't like it, then there could be some luggage getting packed and guys heading out the door before the end of the season to kind of change up the mix of this roster.
Maybe the Clarkson-Horton trade sums it up. It just seems like this team has been badly managed so many times, because Johansson might become the next star player to pass through the Blue Jackets' fingers. Obviously, Rick Nash was there for a while. I think people understood why he left when he did, because even at that time, Columbus, although they were making progress, didn't look like they were really going to be a contender anytime soon. So he moved on. Gabrick was there for a little while. Jeff Carter, of course. I mean, even Umberger was still had something to his rep when he was there. But they keep losing these top players, and I've got to question the amount they paid Nick Foligno, or more to the point, maybe adding in things like no movement clauses based on what was effectively one very good year. Credit were due to Nick Foligno, but he got paid for that one good year. And I mean, he's 28 now, and he's signed through to 2021. As you said, Clarkson deal was kind of weird because, again, this comes back to management. They didn't insure Nathan Horton's contract. So when he went down with that back problem, they were basically paying a guy to do nothing and not getting any way to recoup that dollar value. So at least, as you said, in Clarkson, you have a warm body on the ice. And I mean, David Clarkson's David Clarkson. And I said this when he signed for the Leafs. It's kind of like, this is the guy who stood in front of the net while Ilya Kovalchuk pumped one-timers and slap shots at the net. And then Clarkson picked up the garbage. And all of a sudden, when he hasn't got Ilya Kovalchuk on the point on the power play, who was, at the time, one of the top 5 players in the world, in my opinion, oh, look, David Clarkson's not as good as we thought he was. But it just seems like it's been so badly handled. The Johansen stuff, as I said, and obviously he's been benched and scratched, that's the word I'm looking for. And I mean, the defence I'm not wild about either. I just, Jack Johnson's okay, but for $4.3 million, and Fida Teotin's earning 4.5 for another 3. It's just this horrible kind of mess. And when all the parts come together, I'd agree with you, and I probably would have them as one of the 8 teams to make it when it all comes together. But now that it's not working, geez, that looks like a horrible situation right there. That roster, they've got less than $1 million in cap space.
Oh yeah, and in this salary cap era, in a team like Columbus, who in the past they haven't spent to the cap ceiling, they've kind of almost been a budget team for some years now with all these heavy contracts. Foligno, like you mentioned, he's signed until 2021, and it boggles my mind how these. I guess I'm not. It's no knock on Foligno, but he's not an elite star player.
No.
He's a nice player to have on your team. But he has that great season in a contract year. Like, he's never shot, his shooting percentage was never that high, his goals, his career high in all these offensive categories at that age, at 26, 27. He's never done it before. He's not going to be that player ever again. It was a contract year. It amazes me how some of these teams just don't see that and still give these long-term big money contracts.
Yeah.
And the cap era, that's going to handicap you. So you got Foligno on the books, you got Clarkson on the books until 2020. That's going to Fedor Tutin for a couple of years, Hartnell until 2019. That's going to handcuff you. One, trying to make moves and add players to upgrade certain areas.
Yeah.
Two, give young players deals, extensions. So say this Ryan Johansen situation blows over, he stays with the franchise. When he's in RFA in a couple of years, the Blue Jackets will have the leverage because he's an RFA.
Sure.
But you're still going to be shelling out $6-7 million for a kid who can score you 70, 80, whatever points, for the next long while. And also you can't buy out. You're not going to buy out some of these guys just because you're going to have that on your cap. And just trying to bring on new players in free agency. You got to fit them around your salary cap number, and you can have some of these big money deals of low production that they're handcuffing you, and it's really going to keep you. You're going to be just treading water because you just be sitting there waiting for these long-term deals to expire. Because there's no way in heck you're going to be able to unload them on some team. Because even a team like, say, the Coyotes, who Don Mully admitted in June he was going to explore the trade market in the summer to maybe look for deals to get them over the salary cap floor. Well, that's nice and all, but I don't think you're going to be taking guys like David Clarkson to have on their cap for the next 6 years. Maybe shorter-term deals they might take on with high cap hits, but nothing like those kind of deals. So you're pretty much stuck with them, and that's going to hinder you making progress and improving, while teams around you with better management and better cap situations are going to take advantage, and you're going to be the teams making the playoffs every year.
I mean, sure. And the thing is, Boone Jenner's a restricted free agent this summer, Ryan Murray as well. So where they lose Rennie Bourque's contract, they're basically going to have to pay Jenner and Murray to keep them around, or potentially risk losing them. Because I think a lot of people are still pretty high on Ryan Murray. I know he's had injury problems. A lot of people would take Boone Jenner in a heartbeat. So
Yeah.
you kind of feel like these are two guys, if Columbus can't figure something out, who are maybe primed for even for an offer sheet or something like that. And, again, I mean, this is maybe what we saw a few years ago with Shea Weber. Philadelphia put the offer sheet in. Nashville had to match, and they did at the time. And they had the cap to do it. Columbus just don't. They just don't have that cap space. And somebody can very quickly screw the Blue Jackets with one offer sheet for Murray or Jenner, even a lowish one. And as
and the specter of offer sheets, I always get tired of hearing about offer sheets just because they rarely happen. But of course, every June, it's like every other day there's a new. Is PK Subban going to get an offer sheet? Yada yada yada. But certainly the specter is there because you never know. I mean, who saw that Shea Weber Flyers offer sheet coming? I don't think anybody did. But if you're on the Kika line, you obviously have that in the back of your head, saying there is that chance that a team could. They want Boone Jenner, so they're going to try and sign him. And then also in the process could try and screw the Blue Jackets out of keeping that player. Or if they match, like you said, it'll mess up their cap situation even further. And they may have to make another move or buy out a player or just, trying to work around whatever that cap hit would be. So Keekline and John Davidson are going to have a pretty interesting second half of the season just to kind of, set things up going forward because it's not a pretty picture right now for the Blue Jackets.
I mean, if you're Ron Hextall, don't you purposely offer sheet Boone Jenner? Because if you get Boone Jenner, that's Boone Jenner in a Flyers uniform, which is, almost, bar Chris Pronger, almost the most flyery flyer you could get in a sense, the way he plays. And you get to screw up one of your divisional rivals in the same breath.
Yeah, absolutely. And a guy like Boone Jenner, he's not a PK Subban, that level. So he's an affordable RFA.
Exactly.
A guy who you could give, $3-4 million for 4 or 5 years or whatever it is, and it's not going to completely kill your cap if you're a team like the Flyers. So that's like I said, Keekline's got to keep that in mind before July 1st because he's going to be busy, negotiating extensions, and if they don't get these guys signed in time, they're going to be subject to offer sheets, and that could really make the summer for the Blue Jackets.
I mean, we've mentioned Ryan Johansen a couple of times. Just to slightly focus a little bit on the situation with him, the trade rumours keep swirling, and the issue I have with this is, although I'm sure Kekäläinen would have plenty of offers if he was really truly serious about moving Ryan Johansen, the problem I have is if they move him, then suddenly Brandon Dubinsky is their number one centre. And I don't see Brandon Dubinsky as a number one centre on any team. I like Dubinsky as a player. If he's your number two centre, that's fine. If he's number three, that's even better, even for the money, because that means you've got a pretty good 1, 2, 3 if he's dropped down to your third line. But, in a division which has got Crosby, Malkin, Tavares, Claude Giroux, he's a great shutdown guy, but I can't see Dubinsky as a number one centre. And all you're doing, if you're Columbus, is unless you get something significant back, maybe at the back end, you're just making yourselves weaker, in a sense, to kind of cut off your nose to spite your face. I don't see where they can go with this.
Yeah. Absolutely, and you look at all especially the teams out west, where are they one of the strongest points of the team? They're down the middle. It's strong centers, and you trade Ryan. We see it on Twitter all the time. With people with tweets. You trade Ryan Johansen, that means you don't have Ryan Johansen.
Yeah.
So you're going to trade Ryan Johansen, like you said, Rob. You need to get something very significant in return. And there was that rumor. I don't know if it was a rumor or just maybe just some talk. Johansen for Seth Jones in Columbus would make sense because Nashville is looking for a top tier center, and certainly Seth Jones can help the defense for the Blue Jackets. But then you trade Johansen for a D, that leaves you weak down the middle. And who do we just talk about? Boone Jenner. You're going to have to re-sign Boone Jenner then to keep him down, keep another strong center. So, and like I said, you have the Dubinsky there for the next couple of years, but he's not a number one guy. So it just you think you're solving one problem, but it still leaves you with a lot of question marks. And there's still 2 years for Johansen's deal left. certainly, you don't want to go into the trade deadline next season with Johansen on your roster and not extended, because certainly it's just going to become a huge distraction for that team. So far, things, since the scratching, you haven't seen Johansen sulk or pout off in the media like we've seen with some players in the past. So maybe that tough love Tortorella's given him, maybe he's kind of waking up and will come around. So it remains to be seen, but it's just another interesting plot point here in the story of the Blue Jackets of this season.
Cool. One final thing, Sean, as we're entering the holiday period, kind of a strange little halfway marker in the season for a lot of people. Which team and or player have impressed you most so far this season?
That's a good question. There's a lot of obvious ones out there, but I think I would go with the Minnesota Wild. I'm pretty sure I had them as being the first team to fire their head coach in Mike Yeo, and I wasn't sold on Devin Dubnyk, playing back at that level they did last year, but they've been great. And Chuck Fletcher's made some great moves there. They're short the defense. Jared Spurgeon is rock solid, and they have Matt Dumba there, obviously Ryan Suter, and they're getting scoring from all down that roster. Zach Parise obviously is doing what he's getting paid a lot of money to do. But even the other guys like Jason Zucker had a nice year. Thomas Vanek actually scoring goals, which is great to see. Miku Koivu, who's never really been a huge offensive force there. He's having a solid season, and it's just you look at the roster and they're getting some good balanced scoring. It's not just the top line or the top six carrying the load. It's kind of spread out there, and like I said before, the defense that they've built and been able to keep intact there has been solid. And Dubnyk is having he's not playing like he was from January to March last year, but he's playing well enough behind that team where he's giving them a chance to win every single night, and they're playing in a tough division. The Central is just going to be a huge dogfight, and there's going to be 1, 2, maybe 3 good teams in that division not making the playoffs just because of the way things are set up. So the one curious thing about them is I believe, I'm just looking at this real quick. Yeah, they still got a lot more division games to play, which is going to be curious to see, because teams the Central Division going to be eating themselves over the next couple months, fighting for one of those couple playoff spots and then maybe for 1 or 2 wild cards. So if you're one of the teams that survives that Central Division and gets in the playoffs, I think it's going to set teams up in the right mindset going forward and just trying to get out of that division again. Come playoff time, but I think the Wild, the way they're set up now, and certainly sure Chuck Fletcher's make another move or 2 here, before the playoff time, and depending on how the trade market is to improve. So, yeah, I think if you're looking for a sleeper out west right now, I think the Minnesota Wild are probably that team.
Yeah, that's probably not a bad shout, and I kind of feel sorry for Mike Yeo because he seems to be the guy everybody expects to get fired first every year for the last 2 or 3 years. I feel sorry for him because he's permanently on the hot seat. Even if they were first overall, I kind of feel like he'd be the one. As soon as they drop to second, everybody he's going to get fired. They're not keeping it up anymore. They're not playing as well. And yeah, they got a good little group there now. I like the deal they signed with Jared Spurgeon this week. I think he's kind of a guy who's flown under the radar a little bit for a lot of people. So 4 years, $20.75 million extension is a pretty good deal for a guy who's basically their number 2 defenseman. And I think that Ryan Suter got pissed that he was separated from Spurgeon, speaks quite highly of how good Spurgeon's been for that team. So, yeah, I like the Wild. And maybe like you, I was kind of curious to see how Devin Dubnyk did this year, but he's looked pretty solid. And like I said, they've got depth, and they've got some good young guys like Dumba, as you mentioned. So they could be interesting in playoff time. And I also like what the Panthers have done. They've surprised me early this year and just seem to be better than the sum of their parts. And Roberto Luongo's been excellent. He's in that Vezina conversation as well. But Sean, thank you very much for joining me today. Where can people find you online and so forth?
Oh, they can follow me on Twitter, Sean_Leahy, SeanLeahy, and obviously check us out over at Yahoo Puck Daddy, where are going through our year in review. We have a top 10 list every single day through the end of the year. So today was the top 10 people of controversy. I imagine you probably know who number one is, but the rest of the list is pretty, you might have some question marks there for the rest of the list. But we had shooter goals yesterday. We still have best saves to come, best goals of the year, best social media moments, best hockey fights. I believe it was on Christmas Day. So a lot more things coming up through the end of the year. And then myself and Greg Wyshynski will be in Boston for New Year's, covering the Winter Classic, the alumni game, and potentially this women's outdoor game that'll be there. So lots more fun ahead.
Perfect. Great. Thank you very much, Sean. Thanks for joining me. Take care.
Yeah, Rob. Take care.
One.
Puck short.
And there we go. Thanks again to Sean Leahy for joining me on today's One Puck Short podcast. A little bit of housekeeping stuff from my end. You can find me on Twitter at RobMcGregor35. You can also email the show, onepuckshort@gmail.com if you want to get in touch. You can also find the blog, onepuckshort.wordpress.com. I put a piece up early today about Winnipeg's Mathieu Perreault, who's maybe one of the most underrated playmakers in the league, certainly maybe one of the best value playmakers in the league right now. You can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/onepuckshort, and you'll find on the blog on the right-hand side with the menus and things like that, there's a PayPal donation link and an Amazon affiliate link. They're simply there if you want to support the show. The PayPal link, just hit the link, takes you to the PayPal donation page. If you think we're worth £1, £5, £10, £1 million, whatever, if you enjoy what we do, it all goes towards keeping the show alive, equipment, hosting costs, that sort of stuff. The Amazon affiliate link kind of works in a slightly different way. Click the link, takes you to Amazon, you shop in the normal way, doesn't cost you a single penny extra, but when you hit pay at the checkout, we get a little kickback from the guys at Amazon. Again, it all gets funneled back into the show. So there's a couple of ways you can support One Puck Short if you would like to. Thanks to all my guests throughout 2015. Thanks to everybody at home who's listened, who's shared, who's subscribed, who's left reviews, comments, who's got in touch, who's entered some of our competitions or taken part in any of our Q&As or whatever really. So thank you to you all. I hope you all enjoy the holiday period, have a Merry Christmas and so forth, and I'll speak to you all again very soon.
Surprise, and the gifts we despise.